Belka and Strelka, dog cosmonauts who made a space flight on the Soviet Sputnik 5 spacecraft on August 19, 1960. Subscribe to the channel to learn the story. The main purpose of the flight was to study the effect of space flight factors on the organism of animals and other biological objects: overload, prolonged weightlessness, transition from overload to weightlessness and back; to study the effect of space radiation on animals and plant organisms, on the state of their vital activity and heredity; to test the systems that ensure human vital activity, flight safety and safe return to Earth. Several medical and biological experiments and scientific studies of outer space were also conducted. The flight lasted more than 25 hours. During this time, the ship made 17 complete revolutions around the Earth. Belka and Strelka became the first animals to orbit space and successfully return to Earth. On August 19, 1960 at 11:44 Moscow time, the second satellite spacecraft was successfully launched from Launch Complex No. 1. The cabin containing Belka and Strelka was placed in the spacecraft 2 hours before the launch. Sergei Pavlovich Korolev personally supervised the preparation of the spacecraft for the launch. During the launch and altitude gain, the dog's breathing and pulse rate were very rapid, but when the spacecraft was put into orbit, everything was normalized. The life support system installed in the cabin of the satellite ship fully ensured normal life activity of the animals. Air pressure, temperature, and humidity in the spacecraft cabin were provided by the life support systems within the established norm. Air purification was periodically performed. Feeding automats provided food and water to Squirrel and Strelka twice a day, within the framework of the experiment on the possibility of food intake and weightlessness. Registration of physiological functions throughout the flight was provided by a specially designed set of medical research equipment. The air regeneration unit contained a special regeneration substance that absorbed carbon dioxide and water vapor and released the necessary amount of oxygen. The supply of the regenerating substance met the animals' oxygen needs for a long time. During their flight, Belka and Strelka traveled a distance of 700,000 kilometers. The experiment of daily orbital flight of Belka and Strelka on the second satellite spacecraft was a significant contribution to the study and exploration of outer space. The scope of the conducted research and the nature of the task solved made it possible to draw conclusions about the possibility of human orbital flight around the Earth. During the flight of Belka and Strelka, and according to the results obtained after it, scientists obtained unique scientific data on the influence of space flight factors on physiological, biochemical, genetic, and cytological systems of animals, including mammals and plants. In Belka and Strelka after orbital flight, biochemical studies showed that the daily flight caused a stress-type reaction in them, but on Earth these deviations quickly returned to the initial values. It was concluded that this reaction was temporary during the flight. No noticeable changes in metabolism were also found. Scientists were alarmed by some peculiarities of the physiological state of the dog Belka, who after the fourth turn became extremely restless, struggled, and tried to free himself from the elements of fastening. The dog was barking. It was clearly visible that he was not feeling well, although his traveling companion Strelka spent the whole flight calmly. No abnormalities were observed in the post-flight tests performed on the dogs. The conclusions were made that it is necessary to be cautious in planning the forthcoming human space flight. On the basis of this, it was decided to limit the flight of the first man into space to a minimum number of turns. A few months after the flight, Strelka brought a healthy offspring of 6 puppies. Belka and Strelka lived at the State Research and Testing Institute of Aviation and Space Medicine and died at a very old age. Currently, their stuffed animals are in the Memorial Museum of Cosmonautics in Moscow. One of Strelka's puppies, Pashinka, who was given to Jacqueline Kennedy at her request, grew up in the presidential family in the USA and bore offspring from another White House resident, the male dog Charlie. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.